In the small Ghanaian town of Ebureso, life usually moved at a gentle pace. The sun shone over its dusty roads and modest homes, creating a warm, inviting atmosphere. Ekwa, a slim and strikingly beautiful woman with light skin and expressive brown eyes, found her life forever changed on the day her mother-in-law, Mansa, announced that her son Kweku would take a second wife, a wealthy concubine named Ya. Kweku himself was tall, light-skinned, handsome, and muscular. He worked on a cocoa farm on the outskirts of town and earned just enough to support his family. But Mansa believed that prosperity lay beyond the farm. Determined to see her lineage thrive, she came up with the plan of marrying Kweku to a rich woman who could bring in additional wealth. Ekwa's heart sank the moment she learned of her mother-in-law's plot. Mansa was a woman of formidable will. Despite her own slim figure and refined features, she had an iron core that never wavered in the face of opposition. For years, she had pushed Kweku into decisions that promised a better future, but often at the expense of his own contentment. When Ekwa and Kweku married, Mansa seemed resigned to the match. She accepted Ekwa, albeit begrudgingly. But now that Ya, a socially prominent and also slim, elegantly beautiful woman, had shown interest in Kweku, Mansa seized the opportunity without hesitation. Ekwa could only watch as Mansa orchestrated the second marriage, taking out secret loans in the family's name to fund an extravagant ceremony meant to impress the wealthy concubine's family. Gossip began to buzz throughout Ebureso. People whispered that Mansa's ambitions would bring trouble. Some pitied Ekwa, others envied her for having a husband who seemed so desirable and was now receiving attention from a well-off woman. Meanwhile, Kweku found himself torn between the love he held for Ekwa and the respect he had for his mother. Late one afternoon, Ekwa sat under the shade of a broad mango tree in their modest courtyard. She thought about her life, about Kweku's once gentle smiles, about the happiness they had planned when they first wed. The news of a second wife rattled her soul. Deep inside, she feared losing everything she had built with Kweku. Yet, she was determined not to let Mansa's manipulations break their bond. If only she could find a way to uncover the truth behind these sudden wedding dates and hold on to her marriage. But the wheels of fate had already been set in motion. With the ceremony date looming, Mansa spared no expense in preparing an event that the entire town would remember. Dramas were hired, lavish attire was purchased, and the wealth of Ya's family was flaunted at every turn. Unbeknownst to Ekwa, her life was about to take another drastic turn, one that would push her to seek help far beyond Ebureso's humble borders and bring her face to face with secrets that threatened the very foundations of her family. As dawn broke over Ebureso, the entire town buzzed with excitement for the upcoming marriage ceremony. A large banner hung over the main street, welcoming Ya and her family. Ya, like many in her affluent circle, had a light complexion that made her look striking under the West African sun. Slim and poised, she wore a traditional Kent cloth fitted to accentuate her figure, complementing her graceful walk. For Ekwa, the days passed in an agonizing blur. Each morning, she rose to find new decorations in the courtyard, new drummers rehearsing, and fresh gossip swirling. She tried to avoid the spotlight, withdrawing into the small back room of the house she shared with Kweku. Her husband, torn between guilt and duty, spent most of his time struggling to balance his mother's demands with his quiet love for Ekwa. Even in his confusion, Kweku cut a heroic figure, tall, muscular arms straining under simple cotton shirts, his earnest eyes silently pleading for understanding. It was on one of these tumultuous afternoons that Ya and her entourage arrived in a long convoy of glossy SUVs. Crowds of curious onlookers gathered around, hoping to catch a glimpse of the wealthy bride-to-be. As the vehicles halted, Yas stepped out with effortless grace, her posture regal, her smile reserved. Despite the tension, Ekwa found herself momentarily intimidated by Yas' undeniable beauty and poise. Mansa, wearing her best Geli head wrap, greeted Yas' family with a broad smile. Ekwa noticed the calculating glint in her mother-in-law's eyes. This was the moment Mansa had been waiting for, the moment to seal her grand scheme. Secretly, Mansa had borrowed heavily to put on this impressive show, loans taken out in Kweku's name without his knowledge. The hope was that Yas' prosperous family would overlook the debts, eventually paying them off in exchange for a strong marital alliance. During the welcome feast, Ekwa remained in the background, quietly serving guests steaming bowls of Ghanaian jollof and succulent grilled tilapia. Occasionally, she caught Kweku's gaze, his eyes filled with longing and worry. She also noticed how Ya observed her with a mix of curiosity and understated rivalry. Everyone at the feast sensed the palpable tension, though no one dared to address it outright. As evening approached, the once lively courtyard grew still. Ekwa retreated to her room, heart pounding with dread. She could hear laughter and celebration through the thin walls, reminders of an event that was sure to change her life forever. She sank onto the edge of her bed and wrapped her arms around herself, wishing for a miracle that would undo the day's happenings. Outside, Mansa and Yas' family finalized more details for the ceremony. Little did they know, their meticulously orchestrated wedding celebration would soon take a tragic turn, one that would plunge them all into an entanglement of legal battles, financial ruin, and the unearthing of long-buried secrets. The day of the wedding celebration arrived swathed in vibrant colors and pounding rhythms. Drums echoed down the dusty streets of Abureso, while dancers twisted and turned to the beats. Every detail was lavish, from the hand-stitched can cloth adorning the guests to the flower-laden arches leading to the ceremony grounds. Mansa's eyes gleamed with triumph. She stood at the entrance, greeting guests in a regal outfit that highlighted her slim frame, her light skin glowing in the early morning sun. Kweku, typically modest, now found himself in an ornate gold-trimmed gown. His strong, muscular build was accentuated by the tailor's careful work. Yet, behind his outward composure, he felt a storm of emotions. He glanced around for Ekwa, hoping to catch one last reassuring smile before giving himself over to the ceremony. Meanwhile, Ekwa, dressed in a simple but elegant lace gown, looked on from the sidelines, her heart heavy. The wedding progressed with traditional rites and communal blessings. Yas' family displayed their affluence, bringing in crates of expensive drinks and gifts to seal the union. Mansa believed this was the key to the family's financial salvation. Yet, all the while, shadowy rumors drifted among the attendees about how Mansa had paid for the ceremony, whispers of secret loans taken out under Kweku's name. Just when the final portion of the ceremony began, where Ya and Kweku would exchange solemn vows, a sudden screech of tires cut through the music. A sleek car, driving recklessly, came hurtling down the narrow dirt path toward the gathering. Guests gasped and scattered in all directions. In the chaos, the car clipped Ekwa, throwing her to the ground before speeding away. Screams erupted, drums fell silent, and the joyous occasion descended into panic. Kweku rushed to Ekwa's side, his heart pounding. He cradled her in his arms, tears mingling with sweat as he shouted for help. Blood stained her carefully chosen gown. In the background, Ya stood frozen in shock, her hands over her mouth. Mansa, meanwhile, rushed to call for a vehicle to take Ekwa to the nearest hospital. By the time they carried Ekwa away, the once elated crowd was left in stunned silence. The driver of the hit-and-run had vanished. As people murmured about the extravagance of the event and the sudden accident, it became clear that something dark overshadowed this day meant for celebration. The wedding had taken place, but so had a tragedy that no one could ignore. Unbeknownst to Ekwa, This accident would ignite a chain of events that would bring to light hidden financial dealings and pit her against powerful forces. Mansa might have orchestrated a second marriage to improve her family's fortunes, but the collision's aftermath would spiral into a crisis that not even Mansa's fierce determination could control. In the days following the accident, Ekwa lay in the town's modest clinic, recovering from a fractured collarbone and bruised ribs. Though her injuries were not life-threatening, the pain and emotional turmoil weighed heavily on her. The medical costs mounted quickly, adding to the secret wedding debt that had already begun to stir whispers around Abureso. Kweku rarely left Ekwa's bedside. Even in his distressed state, his handsome features and strong, muscular arms became a comforting presence for her. With each gentle touch, he silently promised to shield her from further harm. But outside the clinic's walls, an entirely different drama was unfolding. Ya's family, owners of the vehicle involved in the hit and run, refused to take responsibility. They flatly claimed that the driver had acted alone, dismissing any demand for compensation. What shocked Ekwa even more was their refusal to cooperate with the car insurance proceedings. They insisted Ekwa had been at fault, saying she had carelessly walked into the path of the car. Mansa, normally aggressive in defending her family's interests, remained strangely silent about the accident. Rumor had it that her newly formed ties to Ya's powerful family had turned her cautious. She did not want to jeopardize the newfound wealth and potential payoffs she anticipated through the marriage. Behind closed doors, Mansa pressed Kweku to avoid taking legal action against his new in-laws. She argued that keeping peace might lead to bigger rewards in the future. All the while, Ekwa seethed with frustration. She was not only facing physical pain but also watching her husband torn between loyalty to her and loyalty to his mother's schemes. Determined not to let herself be scapegoated, Ekwa confided in her best friend, Abina, a slim, energetic woman with light brown hair. Abina listened with empathy and voiced the same advice that had begun echoing through town. Ekwa needed a seasoned car accident lawyer. Word of an experienced attorney, Mr. Opoku, himself a tall, lean figure with a commanding presence, reached Ekwa through the local grapevine. Known for his meticulous approach, Mr. Opoku had won several high-profile cases against powerful opponents. If anyone could untangle the web of lies and discover the truth behind the hit and run, it was him. Still, seeking legal action meant crossing a line, defying Mansa and potentially shaming Ya's influential family. Late one night, as the clinic buzzed with the hum of fluorescent lights, Ekwa stared at the ceiling, her injuries throbbing in protest. She knew what she had to do. She refused to be bullied into silence. For the first time since the accident, she felt a spark of hope. If she could persuade Mr. Opoku to take her case, perhaps she could defend herself against the false accusations and hold the responsible parties accountable. Little did she know that this decision would not only challenge Mansa's manipulation but also reveal a tangle of financial secrets threatening to unravel everything she thought she knew about her family. Ekwa's first meeting with Mr. Opoku took place under the canopy of a neem tree at the clinic's garden. Warm sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled patterns on the ground. Ekwa, still in a cast, gingerly shifted in her seat, while Mr. Opoku, tall and lithe with alert eyes, listened attentively. She recounted every detail of the hit and run, the wedding debt, and how her in-laws were brushing off her injury to avoid tarnishing their new alliance. Throughout Ekwa's story, Mr. Opoku's face remained composed, but his sharp gaze betrayed a deep understanding. He had seen many cases like hers, where individuals of limited means found themselves battling wealthier, influential opponents. Though he exuded a calm demeanor, he possessed a reputation for tenacity that made him both feared and respected in legal circles. When she finished, he nodded slowly. "I want to see all documents related to the wedding finances," he said. "We'll gather evidence that proves the link between Ya's family and the car's owner." He handed Ekwa his business card, the clean white edges contrasting with the red dust of Abureso that stained almost everything else. "I'll do my best, but you must be prepared for a fight. They'll try to discredit you at every turn." From that moment, the wheels of justice began to turn. Ekwa found renewed purpose in preparing for the legal battles ahead. She and her friend Abina spent hours at the local assembly building, combing through public records, searching for proof of the loans Mansa had taken out under the family's name. Meanwhile, Kweku grappled with conflicting loyalties. Tall and muscular, he cut an imposing figure as he strode around town collecting statements from witnesses who had seen the car speed away. But each time he confronted his mother about the mounting debts, Mansa deflected with half-truths, determined to protect her newly formed alliance with Ya's family. One afternoon, after days of fruitless searching, Ekwa discovered a crumpled document hidden among Mansa's belongings, a loan agreement bearing Kweku's signature. Except, the signature looked forged. Anger and betrayal flared within her. Now, she had tangible proof of Mansa's deceit. She rushed to Mr. Opoku with the evidence. He studied the papers, his expression grim. "This changes everything," he said. "Not only can we challenge them on the insurance fraud, but we may also prove financial impropriety. If we play this right, we can show a pattern of manipulation." For the first time in weeks, Ekwa felt a glimmer of hope. Yes, the battle would be uphill. Yes, she risked alienating her mother-in-law and Ya's powerful family. But with Mr. Opoku in her corner, she knew she was not alone. As the sunlight faded over Abureso, Ekwa stood at the threshold of a new fight, a fight for her dignity, her health, and her marriage. Whether she would succeed or be swallowed by the power plays remained to be seen, but she was resolved to see it through to the end. From the outside, Mansa's compound still looked grand and lively, visitors milling about, vibrant decorations left over from the wedding, and the aroma of spicy jollof rising from the kitchen. Beneath that veneer, however, a tempest brewed. Ya, ever poised and slim in her fashionable dresses, resented the growing controversy. Kweku had not fulfilled her expectations of unquestioning devotion. Instead, he was running around with Ekwa, preparing for a legal battle. Worse yet, Ya's family found themselves dragged into the public eye, criticized for refusing to pay insurance claims and rumored to be hiding the driver involved in the hit and run. Late one evening, Ya cornered Mansa in the courtyard. Her voice trembled with suppressed anger. "This was supposed to be a simple arrangement to boost your family and secure my position. Now there's a lawyer poking around our finances. My parents are furious." Mansa, dressed in a richly embroidered kaftan that set off her light skin, responded with a tight-lipped smile. She had not anticipated Ekwa would fight back so effectively. Every step of the way, she had believed that money and influence could sweep obstacles aside. Inside their bedroom, Kweku listened through the thin walls, torn between loyalty to his mother and a growing awareness that what had been done to Ekwa was wrong. His muscular frame tensed with anxiety. He knew his mother's ambition had led them here, yet he also saw how Ya had manipulated circumstances to her advantage. Guilt weighed on him. He felt he had betrayed Ekwa by not stopping this second marriage from happening in the first place. Meanwhile, word of Ekwa's lawsuit spread beyond Abureso, reaching the neighboring towns. People began to speculate on the shady deals Mansa had made. A local journalist with a penchant for exposing scandals arrived, sniffing around for leads. Ekwa, well aware of the community's appetite for drama, tried to keep her composure. She balanced her medical treatments with long sessions documenting events for Mr. Opoku. Then came a crucial breakthrough. The driver of the hit-and-run car, a distant relative of Ya, was reportedly seen in a nearby region. Mr. Opoku seized the moment, dispatching a message through his network, hoping to verify the driver's location and confirm the family's involvement. As the investigation deepened, so did Mansa's desperation. One night, Mansa visited Ekwa in the clinic under the guise of concern. She paced at the foot of Ekwa's bed, her tone pleading. "Can't we resolve this in the family? Think about what we stand to lose. Lawsuits are messy." But Ekwa, whose slim frame carried bruises hidden beneath hospital garments, refused to yield. "I won't drop the case," she said quietly. "You forced this marriage. Your new in-laws are blaming me for their mistakes. My voice won't be silenced." Mansa left with bitterness etched on her face. Tension choked the night air, and everyone sensed the family was teetering on the edge of a scandal that could consume them all. The day of the preliminary hearing at the local courthouse dawned, cloudy and tense. Crowds gathered outside the modest brick building, straining to catch sight of the parties involved in what had become the most talked about case in the region. Ekwa arrived in a simple yet elegant dress, her slender figure still showing signs of her recent injuries. Standing by her side was Kweku, his tall, muscular form offering silent support. She felt a flicker of relief that her husband had chosen to stand by her, despite the enormous pressure from his mother and Ya. Across the lobby, Ya and her family made their entrance, commanding attention in designer outfits. Even so, a certain wariness clouded Ya's otherwise composed demeanor. Beside her, Mansa looked every bit the matriarch, her slim figure dressed in a stately wrapper. She exuded confidence, but every now and then her eyes darted nervously toward the imposing mahogany doors that led into the courtroom. Once inside, the proceedings began. Mr. Opoku presented the forged loan documents, offering a meticulous account of how Mansa had acquired multiple lines of credit under Kweku's name to finance the wedding. The hushed crowd of onlookers gasped at the revelations. Mansa's face hardened, but she refused to meet Ekwa's gaze. Next, Mr. Opoku detailed the evidence linking the hit-and-run driver to Ya's extended family. He cited witness statements and contradictory claims in the insurance records. Each sentence was methodical, each fact a nail in the coffin of the defense's version of events. When it was Ya's family's turn to speak, their lawyer claimed it was all a misunderstanding. They argued that the driver had acted independently, that the loan documents were irrelevant to the accident, and that Ekwa had intentionally walked into the path of the vehicle to disrupt the wedding. The crowd murmured in disbelief. Yet, Mansa's eyes lit up for a moment, perhaps a desperate hope that these arguments might somehow clear her and keep her alliance intact. Sensing the momentum, Mr. Opoku called his final witness, a local bank employee who verified that the signatures on the loan documents did not match Kweku's official records. The employee also confirmed that Mansa had insisted on processing the papers quickly, hinting at fraudulent intent. A hush fell over the courtroom. Even Ya avoided looking at Mansa, as though she too had not known the extent of the deceit. Throughout the proceedings, Ekwa felt her nerves twist and tighten like a coiled spring. Yet, she also experienced vindication. She glanced at Kweku, whose eyes brimmed with a mixture of sadness and relief. The hearing concluded with the judge ordering a more in-depth investigation and scheduling another court date. While no final verdict had been issued, Ekwa walked out of the courthouse feeling lighter. The truth was finally emerging, and for once, she was no longer alone in her fight. However, the battle was far from won. Outside, reporters thrust microphones in Ekwa's face, peppering her with questions about the next steps. On the other side, Mansa huddled with Ya and her family, grim expressions betraying the unraveling of their carefully constructed facade. The final court date arrived weeks later, in a swirl of apprehension and anticipation. By then, the driver responsible for Ekwa's injuries had been located. Under scrutiny, he confessed that Ya's family had pressured him to keep quiet and deny any involvement in the accident. With this testimony and the evidence of the forged loans, the case weighed heavily against Ya and Mansa. Ekwa entered the courtroom with measured resolve. She wore a simple, form-fitting gown that accentuated her slim figure, a testament to her quiet strength. Kweku walked beside her, strong arms tensed. His loyalty to Ekwa had finally solidified. He was done being torn by Manso's manipulations. Even Ye, radiant in a sleek dress, couldn't mask the anxiety that lingered in her eyes. As the judge took the bench, a hush fell over the room. One by one, witnesses recounted the events, the secret loans, the lavish wedding ceremony, the hit-and-run accident. Each testimony painted a clearer picture of Manso's ambition and Ya's family's willingness to protect their reputation at all costs. By the end, the conclusion was clear: the blame placed on Ekwa was baseless. The insurance company, upon hearing the court's findings, agreed to release funds to cover Ekwa's medical expenses. Additionally, they initiated legal proceedings against Ya's family for filing misleading statements. When the gavel struck, Ekwa felt a surge of relief wash over her. The ruling vindicated her and exposed the manipulative dealings behind the wedding. Kweku caught her eyes, and for the first time in what felt like ages, they both shared a moment of genuine hope. Manso's shoulders sagged, her once proud stance diminished. She had no choice but to accept the court's decision and face the consequences of her actions. The aftermath was tumultuous. Ye chose to annul the marriage, citing irreconcilable differences and the deception she felt from Manso. She departed Abureso with her family, leaving behind a trail of resentment and shattered dreams. Manso, burdened by the weight of her schemes, quietly retreated to her home to reflect on what she had done to her own son and daughter-in-law. For Ekwa, healing took many forms. Physically, her injuries improved under proper medical care paid for by the insurance settlement. Emotionally, she drew closer to Kweku. He apologized repeatedly for his role, acknowledging how his silence and lack of resolve had nearly destroyed their union. In turn, Ekwa forgave him, understanding the depth of Manso's influence over his life. The marriage that had been pushed to the brink began to mend. One evening, long after the dust of the trial had settled, Ekwa stood on the porch of her modest home, watching the golden sun dip behind the horizon. Kweku joined her, wrapping a protective arm around her waist. With the future stretching before them like the endless African sky, they felt reborn, free from manipulations, united by truth, and ready to rebuild a life guided by mutual respect rather than hidden debts or forced alliances. In that quiet moment, they realized that although the road had been fraught with betrayal and pain, they had emerged stronger. For all the darkness that had tainted Manso's dreams of wealth, the light of honesty and love found its way back into their home, promising a brighter tomorrow in the small Ghanaian town of Abureso. Greed and deceit can destroy families, no matter how much wealth or influence is at stake. Honesty, love, and the courage to stand for what's right prove stronger than manipulation. In the end, truth prevails, and real unity is built on trust and respect. Enjoyed this gripping story from Ghana? Like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring African tales. Don't forget to turn on notifications, the bell icon, to stay updated on new episodes and stories that celebrate truth, resilience, and love. Your support helps keep these important narratives alive.